starting to wonder whether that was really happening or whether he was imagining it. And at the end, I got the impression that the two of them ended up together, no question, but that everything that happened in between, I wasn't sure whether that was, an ambiguous thing, if it was just a nice dream and how it worked out in his mind, or whether it was actually supposed to have really happened. I'm just curious if that was intentional or if I was misunderstanding it. You see what I mean? Was it purposefully ambiguous?
So I will have to answer because this wasn't in Barry's story, so I'm responsible for that.
I liked it. I'm just wondering.
Well, I'm glad you like it, and I'm glad you're in a way you're confused. I mean, I'm not trying to make the public confused. It's the character in this movie has a big life confusion in a way. So, and we all have a sort of a confusion and dizziness at a certain time in life, which is the case of our hero here. And last but not least, this is also a Barry Gifford movie, and I would quote his former film colleague or partner, David Lynch, who says in a book, I think he says, why should we explain all the time in the movie? So, yeah.
No, he said we don't have to explain
whatever,
anything.
I'm sorry for, I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
that's different. It's different. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
Why do we have to explain anything?
Okay.
We don't have to.
I read the Romanian translation of that.
Isn't that guy's last name? Isn't his last name Traum?
Yeah, it's Traum. Yeah, which is exactly. Yeah, that's an answer. Also, that's
was
from
from the
Barry.
story.
That's from Barry Gifford. Yeah, the name is coming from Barry Gifford. That's true.
Yes, ma'am.
I loved it. I'm coming back tomorrow and seeing it again. Does it have a distribution? Will it be showing again in the U.S.?
Well, we have.
DVD
Well, we got an U.S. based agent. They're not that famous. I mean, what can we get as a Romanian film? I mean, and they are currently working on a video on demand release, which I think is going to happen in a month's time, on a platform called Press Screen, if I remember well, and they are a sort of a Tribeca Institute partner, so they're looking forward a DVD release with the Institute. I'm not sure we can get a theatrical release, which it's very difficult to get in the United States. Maybe the movie will be still touring a little bit the country with this kind of meetings. We got some other festivals in the lineup in the States. I think it's one in Florida next month, which is, I think, at Palm Beach, and some others. I don't know exactly right now. So, yeah, it will be more a video on demand and probably DVD release by a few months from now on. Yes.
Does she get a discount for it tomorrow?
I hope there are more people here. I'm sorry there aren't, because this place should be packed for this.
Agreed.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. You talked about this a little bit earlier, but there's a message, obviously, of the cinema of this small town being the guardian of culture.
Yes.
But there's also a little bit of a message about it being the guardian of the economy of the town as well.
Yeah.
Is that a message that was written in the original novella, or something that came through in the film adaptation?
No, I don't think it's in the original novella of Barry. I don't exactly remember.
Not precisely
No, I don't
in
think.
that way. I mean, but you go to these outposts, the countryside especially, and you see these abandoned factories, abandoned canneries, stuff. They appear like ghosts. The towns themselves, like when Lucian was telling me how he shot the scene with the Excelsior Cinema, which they had to create this particular place, and how depressed the town was, and
Yeah, I mean, not to create, because it's not. It's we renovated it a little bit. The place exists, and that was one of the difficult part, to find a place like this theater or the Turkish bath. Not that we don't have them. The country is full of them, but because their original destination has been changed. And for instance, the Turkish bath is shot somewhere in Transylvania, in the middle of the country, because there is an Art Nouveau monument who, because of the law, finally was saved and not transformed into something else. But usually those places are now casinos or pubs or brothels or whatever, I don't know, nightclubs, but none of them has the original destination. And I don't know if there was a very specific economical message there, but for sure there is a sad message inside, because this country was a very flourishing country. And this country was a very beautiful country and a very successful economic-wise country in Europe, and not only. And I don't think that only the Makarov of the Russians and the poor conditions under the communists has transformed this country and what is it today. I think we have made our contribution in the last 20 years of, continuing destroying what we had in a sort of so-called economical positive way. I don't know if I answered to your question, but I'll do my best to do it later.
Yes.
I don't know, I think it's interesting how many people are asking about different messages that you might have been trying to get through in the movie, and you guys kind of respond as more of like, it seems more of like you're discovering things along the way, or it seemed like very much like you were having an adventure as you were making the movie. So I just wanted to ask about, the differences between having a much more like a written, like laid out movie that you go through kind of systematically versus what it sounds like you guys did discovering different parts of the city and then adding and having kind of this amorphous story. I just wanted to hear the differences in making the movies.
Well, the basic story was always there.
Right. But I mean, just kind of like, you said you added things along the way and changed things about this.
Well, I think that, I don't know, I'm not saying this is a good or bad movie. I cannot talk about this. You should judge this. But I think it's an interesting example of, in a way, keeping an original story, changing it in a way dramatical from a certain point of view, then changing it because of the production and contextual factors, then coming back to the story and in a way going back to its meanings. Even the author was seeing it differently at the beginning, and then you end up with something which it's totally different of Barry, because there's a Romanian story there, but on the other hand, he somehow gets himself into that story. That's what we were talking today. And I will leave him talk, but what I wanted to say is that it's very difficult for me to explain you this. I'm not a director, and I wasn't meant to direct this movie. The director of this movie, our friend Bosse, died 1 week after we signed the first financing contract. So there's another element in the story which I didn't want to talk about. But Bosse, he just disappeared, and I was the producer, and I had some commitments financial-wise, and some money to pay to a writer, to some others, and I was in an agony. And I had to somehow finalize it. Again, I'm not judging well or bad, good or bad, but you shouldn't take this as a model. I mean, if there are students in the film school or professors or whatever, no, there's not a model. But there's an interesting study case in a way.
And I think, sometimes you have these sort of happy accidents. And also when I write something, or a novel of mine is taken and made into a movie, whether it's Wild at Heart or Perdita Durango, or this Almost Oriental, or any of the others now, I don't want it to be just like what I wrote in the book, in that story. A film is a film, a movie is a movie. It has a life of its own. And I'm one of those people who feels that as long as the integrity of the story is maintained, that's really all that matters. That's always going to remain just as it is. It's inviolable. The book will always be the book. The story will always be the story as it's published. But the movie is something else entirely, so that I think that the story, as I say, if the integrity is maintained, should just be an inspiration of a sort for the movie. Who wants to do the same thing? I mean, if I'm involved in it anyway, that's my thought. And I think that's why a number of directors that I've worked with, they like my attitude. Because it gives them freedom, and sometimes they go back more to the original text and sometimes not. But I like to see something new. I want to be surprised.
Well, yeah, first of all, I would like to tell you something. For me, the most difficult moment was not when it was premiered or whatever. Of course, it's very important for me if you like or not this movie, if you hate it or not. But on the other hand, the most difficult audience I was expecting was Barry Gifford. I was very afraid of showing him the movie. So for me, when Barry came in and sit down and liked the movie, was the relief in a way. The movie was received very good public-wise, and it had quite negative reviews critic-wise. Some of them they were exceptional. This happened also in the States. We had like 2 quite negative reviews and one which was saying the best Romanian movie of all times or something like this. So it's a very how you say contrasting attitude.
But you did good business.
Yeah, the box office was good, but no, when I'm saying it was well received, I'm not necessarily referring to the box office, which is important, but I'm referring to the attitude, to the atmosphere, to the way that people felt this movie. And they had a very warm welcome to it. I mean, when I'm saying warm, it was really warm. On the other hand, the movie has a very contrasting style to what it's called the New Romanian cinema, and the New Romanian cinema has also its defendants and its critics. So in this perspective, it makes a difference. The movie, yeah. Sorry.
It is definitely different.
Yes, it is, and it matters how do you receive it. I mean, how do you? That's it.
Maybe one more question. We have one more question.
Gentleman there, I think. Yeah, please go on.
There's a beautiful parallel for the love of the cinema in this movie, which is, I think, the only other movie that I have seen the same thing is Cinema Paradiso.
Thank you.
When the scene of it is, and you truly captured that.
Thank you.
Were you aware that you were able to capture that love for the cinema?
I don't know. I will answer again, Barry. I'm sorry, but Philippe Noiret and Tornatore and Cinema Paradiso, I love all of them, and I love this movie. And I never thought to Cinema Paradiso, to be honest with you. Some film critics like you, afterwards, they said, well, there's a part which is, and I'm very happy and I'm very honored. I love Cinema Paradiso, and I would have loved to do much more than what Tornatore did in Cinema Paradiso. I don't think I was able to. Yeah.
You know, one interesting thing about that. One interesting thing about that that's a great thing that you said, and Lucian deserves all that credit. But it's funny because I lived in Italy for 4 years, and I was certainly intimate with the film community and working with a lot of those people and living with them. And I'm not going to mention any names because some of you would recognize, certainly some of the names are pretty prominent. People in the Italian film community, for the most part, despised Cinema Paradiso. Despised it. When I'm saying that, I mean I'm being gentle when I say this. And it's an interesting thing because, I said, why? I mean, I always asked why, because it evinced that love for the cinema in that way, if nothing else. I'm not talking about any of other Tornatore's films or Melena or that shit. I mean, he made some bad movies. There's no question about that. But in my estimation, but I'm with you on that one. And, this was really reflected well with Sammy.
I was in Mons in the Love Film Festival some weeks ago, and I remember that we had 2 or 3 screenings there, and in between 2 screenings I went to see Hugo, because apparently they weren't having any seller in Romania for that movie so far. So I wanted to see the movie. I went there, and I remember I was staying in between 2 Romanians, both of them film critics. And when we went out from the cinema, one was saying, "Oh, how lovely it is," and the other was saying, "This is the most biggest shit I ever saw in my life. How can you ever take me to this movie?" You know. So it depends how you go. I'm a more fiction-oriented, flashy, meaty fiction kind of character, while the new Romanian cinema is very dry in a way. It's very realistic, and it's very, or hyper-realistic. I'm not judging one or the other. I'm a big fan of Aurora or Cristi Puiu, for instance. I love this kind of movie, and I'm also a very Fellini-oriented person, and I don't understand the people who don't have the generosity and the vision when going to the movies to accept all the prosaic, appearances of the cinema in this 100 and something years that cinema has been done, And I think Tornatore had that problem because of, yes, he was going very much away of the neorealism and what some Italians are saying that is the best part of the Italian cinema, which of course it's one of the best, but it's not the only one.
Did you like
What's
the
your,
Me personally, I like you. Yes, yes. I'm not afraid to say it. Yeah. Well, then we have long debates, like people asking, "Well, would you cut 20 minutes of the movie?" And I said, "Yes, but I'm not the author. I mean, I would cut it easily, but I'm not sure I can cut another 10 seconds from The Phantom Father. I cannot give advices to those people, And I was very surprised because I'm coming from a very old traditional school. I had one of the biggest and most important professors of the film history. He was at the top level of, even, I don't know, you may call him David Bordeaux or whoever, they know who George Elitara was. He was one of the top professors in the world. And I learned from him this. And he learned us to what they were calling the direction Lumiere and the direction Méliès. I mean, both the realistic and non-realistic way. And for me, it was very impressive that a guy like Scorsese, I didn't know that the movie, it's also about Georges Méliès in a way, because of course you would never market a movie like that in United States. You can never talk about Georges Méliès. I mean, we can talk to you, of course, you know what I'm meaning. So I was very impressed with that. Now, if we couldn't cut 45 minutes from Hugo, that's another story. That's something else. But it's not me to judge this, Yeah.